turn this over to Jamie Johnson, who is the CEO of a nonprofit that she founded in 2015 called Sisters of the Streets. Jamie, we'll turn it to you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me and thank you for joining. I just want to honor the space of even taking time to join a passion project that focuses outside of ourselves and also forces us to look inward to see how we could be a part of the solution. I very much love the solution focus aspect. And so I think that we spend a lot of time in society focusing on the problem and bringing a lot of awareness to the problems and bringing a lot of value to the trauma versus value to the solutions. And there are many solutions and we are all part of the issue, especially when we're talking about sex trafficking. My expertise is on urban domestic sex trafficking. I want to make that very clear, only for the purpose of there should be red flags going up if somebody says that they are an expert on human trafficking as a whole, because there is too much behind the subject of human trafficking to say that you're an expert on organ trafficking, labor trafficking, as well as sex trafficking. And then to say that you're an expert on domestic, international, child sex trafficking, as well as adult prostitution and things like that. So my experience comes from a perspective of pimp controlled urban domestic sex trafficking that I do have personal experience in, as well as self exploitation. So I just wanted to set that basis and foundation. And so thank you for caring about this topic. I would love to talk a little bit to you about the issue amongst the anti-trafficking community, the anti-trafficking movement that has been made very apparent to me through personal experience, as well as the experience of a lot of my friends. The re-exploitation of those that have already been exploited. So let's backtrack and talk just a second about the value and how it should be mandatory for those with lived experience. I don't identify as a survivor of human trafficking. I call myself a lived experience expert because I'm a expert on my lived experience, on my life. And so I know what works for my healing journey and what does or doesn't. And also I don't want to be boxed in by just my experience with sexual exploitation, right? I have a lot more experience in life than just that portion. And so I like to be valued for my expertise and not just for my trauma. And so lived experience experts should and always need to be at the forefront of any social justice movement. The people that are impacted the most by the issue at hand need to be the ones guiding the healing and the solutions towards that, for that solution, or for that issue, I'm sorry. And so I say that to say that within the sex trafficking movement, the anti-sex trafficking movement, it's taken a really long time for people that have been labeled previously as just prostitutes to be recognized first and foremost as victims and to be valued for their expertise and their experience. There's been a long period of time, about 15, 20 years, that people have fought and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into just being heard. So they didn't put value around being paid for their experiences or expertise. They didn't put value around professionalizing themselves. They didn't put value around realizing that they have all the answers. And so now that we're at a different turning point, where we know what the problem is, we recognize that there is victimization happening within the world of prostitution. Now we're able to demand and kind of shift that narrative to where we are the experts. The people with that lived experience are the experts. You can be an expert through a book, but that's a very limiting expertise because you're learning through other people's experiences. And so to devalue the presence of those with lived experience is really re-traumatizing and exploitive in itself. And so what does that look like? That looks like asking people to share their stories without offering compensation. That looks like forcing people to share just their trauma stories versus coming in to do a training on things that are valuable to them. So if I don't want to share my story, I shouldn't be forced to do that, right? And I shouldn't feel devalued or like I don't have a place in the movement if I'm not sharing my story. If I would like to be a case manager and never reveal that I have lived experience, I should be able to do that and be able to be paid a livable wage, if not more. I should be valued and program direction. I should be able to be hired onto salary paid positions or contractual positions that don't require me to reveal that I have lived experience within this lifestyle of prostitution or sex trafficking. I should be able to be in the midst of creating programs, creating best practices, and being compensated for those things. I shouldn't be asked to do things for free, because us as employees would never go to work for free, right? We wouldn't go and clock in and be like, oh, sounds like a good idea to not get paid today. That's not going to happen. And we wouldn't ask people that have spent 10, 15 years building their education, doctors, surgeons. We wouldn't ask a surgeon to volunteer their time to just do surgery because it's fun, right? So there has to be that median of respect and value. That lived experience needs to be at the forefront, because we have that direct connection and we're able to talk to the populations that we're trying to support in a way that somebody who hasn't experienced those things cannot. And so I can't expect that to be uncompensated. And on top of not compensating, because that should be valued as a job and career position, also I am being a part of the problem. Part of the reason why people go back to the life of fast money, prostitution, go back to their abusive situations, is dominantly for financial reasons, if not the coercion and the mental aspect of it. And so if I am being a part of re-exploitation, which would be not supporting somebody to be able to go home and pay their bills after I've just allowed them to stand on my stage and share all of their trauma and not offer any services to support them in the after effect, I'm ultimately being a part of the problem with pushing them back into their exploitive situations. If I'm not offering assistance because they don't qualify, because they are now out of that lifestyle for a set amount of years, I am re-exploiting them. If I am making $200,000 at a gala with hundreds of donors because that person stood on stage and shared their story of trauma, and I give them a gift card or a bouquet of edible arrangements, that is re-exploitation. If I ask them to overwork when they're supposed to be clocked out, that is exploitation. And so there's so many different examples of how people are re-exploited within the anti-trafficking movement. I know we only have a couple minutes to speak, but I hope that that brings somewhat of a basis to where we cannot ask people to share their traumas, share their lived experience, without also valuing the fact that that is a profession for them to be able to move forward out of that same lifestyle. And so I think if I can leave you with anything, it would be that, to recognize that the lived experience really has the highest value in the solution. And then once we base that foundation, we then bring in partnerships and allyship to be able to support those solutions, while offering financial support and stability to that same population. So hopefully I think I did it. I had my timer on. That was like 7.5 minutes. That's hard to do in 8 minutes. Oh my goodness.
You're good, Jamie. You could even take a minute or two and tell us about Sisters of the Streets, the nonprofit that you founded.
Sure. So Sisters of the Streets, I didn't mean to make a nonprofit, honestly, and I know not everybody has the same beliefs, but for me, God saved my life, and I am thankful every day. And God knew that I needed something to move forward to instead of continuing to look back to. And so what happened was I was really just using Facebook as my diary, but I was hiding because I didn't want it to be my face. I wanted it to be kind of anonymous in a way. And so what I was doing was sharing just about my life in prostitution. I was literally just like word vomiting into Facebook. And what I realized is people started responding, people started reaching out and saying that they thought that they were the only ones that were going through those things. And so I recognized a gap very early on, that there's a whole part before resources that has to happen, which is a community. Like there needs to be a community for people to have a safe space to come forward, to not feel judged and not feel re-traumatized by the fact that they went through trauma, and they want to share that and they want to heal, but not having a space to heal. And so that blossomed into me just wanting any and everyone who was willing to let me come share my story. I did, which then threw me into a place of my own personal healing, realizing what my narrative was versus what the anti-trafficking movement told me my narrative was supposed to be. And I really started embracing my own walk And with that, I realized that my place in life is to create community and connection through empowerment. And empowerment doesn't mean me telling someone what they should or should not do. Empowerment means me walking that walk and showing the results that I get to other people, and that inspiring them to want some of what I have and them finding that within themselves. So really, Sisters of the Streets, we meet people where they're at, and we don't have people adapt to any program. We adapt to the individual, and we do that through financial assistance, direct services. People like myself who suffer from PTSD from their trauma within that exploitation, there's no services for us because we're not in immediate need. And so we come in to fill that financial gap to prevent regressive crisis, which basically is just a nice term for preventing people from going back into survival mode. So if that means paying people's rent, or that means paying for dog food for that person to have an emotional support animal, or that means we're paying for medication, if that means we're paying for daycare or car insurance so somebody can safely get to work, whatever that gap is going to be, that people don't have to go back into that, I got to go get some fast, quick money, or I have to go back to my abusively controlling situation. That's where we want to step in and partner that with a success plan. And so we do that as direct service provision. And then we also provide community support for survivors. So things like support groups, online, virtual assistance. And we also offer survivor empowerment courses. So we have lived experience experts come in and teach skills that they've learned through their healing journey to other lived experience experts for free. So they get that skill set. And we do a lot of referrals and community collaboration and trainings, and really focusing on the societal issues that create the vulnerabilities to create the buyer, the exploiter, and the exploited. So we're unique in offering services to those that are labeled the pimp and the buyer, as well as those that are exploited. And we create the conversation around that as well. We do a lot more, but that's enough. That's probably my time. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.